This is an important day for you. You've got so much perspective on the proceedings. First of all, I want to hit you with the numbers that we just saw, BK. Can you kind of teach us anything or give us any additional layers of information on Rowland and Helton and where they stand now?
Yeah, Matty, it was. It's rare to make that type of jump. Look, you've got to go with the recent voting patterns, the way the voters have been currently, put together, because it's a different voting group now, right. And it's there's a lot of new voters who are getting the vote, so it's changed somewhat. But Jason, we've looked at this a number of different ways, and you can make the jump from 63 to 75%. We saw Mike Messina do that year 5 to 6. But most guys that make a big jump like that are in year 9 to 10, or it used to be 14 to 15, meaning the final year surge. This is rare, but my theory, Jason, is that this is kind of a clearing of the ballot. Bonds, Clemens, Schilling, and Sosa are off it. I think there's a lot of opportunity for writers to have a fresh perspective and have the ballot cleared and say, do any of these guys appeal to me? Everybody's on the border. Do these guys appeal to me? Right. And it seems like Helton is getting more of those votes.
Yeah, that's exactly right. First off, to your first point, we've never seen anything like this. We've never had somebody jump from 52% to getting elected. Larry Walker's the all-time record. He was about 54 and change and then got elected in his last year. But to go from 52 to 75 plus would be historic and amazing, considering he's gotten 0 hits since the last election. But let me tell you where the votes are coming from, because we can break this down with the Ryan Thibodeau Hall of Fame tracker. More than half of Todd Helton's added votes have come from voters who did not have room last year because they were voting for all 10. They'd filled up all 10 spots on their ballot. Scott Rowland only getting 15% of his ads from them. So what that tells you is Rowland was already on those ballots. Todd Helton was not, and that explains the Todd Helton surge.
That's interesting. Again, there was a logjam for a long time. Just to explain it to people, we take it for granted now. But with the guys who were suspected PED ties were logged in there with a lot of guys that also deserved a little more recognition that got in eventually, that we call sabermetric darlings, guys that took a little more scrutiny, and that's Edgar Martinez, Tim Raines, Larry Walker, and those guys gained traction. You never know who's going to gain traction on these ballots. It's a strange thing. A lot of guys, Fred McGriff debuted, I don't think he was around 15%, and just never picked up. Just got to about 32%. Jeff Kent debuted at about, 15%?
He did.
And just never gained traction. He's about 32, 33%. And, just for old school people out there, look, Kent is #1 among second basemen in home runs and RBIs. Those are not insignificant categories. By the way, those are sabermetric categories, too. They're home runs and RBIs. They matter. So, no, career war is important, but somehow it becomes it's branding, it's social media shaming, it's voters who are afraid to be behind the times. There's a lot of that, but initially, at least, it seemed like Larry Walker not only was, hey, we're putting Coors Field numbers in context, but we're just not going to let you in at all, like it never happened. They happened. They were just inflated because of Denver.
Right, and then Larry Walker has clearly paved the way for Todd Helton in more ways than one, and I do think that Larry Walker changed the narrative about Coors Field, because we do live in an age now where we have tools to measure how good was this player, even accounting for the park that he played in. Like Todd Helton's career slash line, everybody who has that slash line is in the Hall of Fame and is basically a legend, or would be tied to PED use. But of course, nobody else played at Coors. Right. And so the fact that we've got a tool just like OPS Plus, which tells us that over Todd Helton's 10-year peak, he had a 144 OPS Plus, and everybody in that group with him is either a Hall of Famer or tied to PEDs. The difference, Todd Helton was averaging 154 games played a year. It was second in that whole group.
That's difficult in that park as well. More difficult.
Playing at Coors is more physically taxing than any ballpark in America.
Yeah, I want to bring up Carlos Beltran, because I am, I don't know, I'm not stunned. It's actually exactly what I figured. The outrage, I'll start with this. I've never seen outrage for a scandal in baseball. Not even Pete Rose, not even performance-enhancing drugs like I saw with the sign-stealing scandal. And here's a pivotal figure in the sign-stealing scandal, the player liaison, if you will, behind the whole thing. And now here's his first year on the Hall of Fame ballot. And I don't know, I think he's taken a slight hit, but not a big hit. And I'm wondering, where is that outrage that was here 3-4 years ago with everyone, the league, obviously, but also the media and also players who don't condemn anyone. They didn't condemn Rose. They didn't condemn the PED guys. They condemned the Astros. And now here's the key Astro in the whole thing and not taking much of a hit. How does that happen?
I'm surprised. Outrage is selective. We've learned that countless times.
It's true.
In our time around baseball. Maybe it was because the Astros just won the World Series and we lived it and we felt it, and that outrage seemed like it welled right back up to life. And yet, when it came time to vote, we haven't seen voters look at cheating the way they did with the PED guys. I thought when you look at what equivalent PED first-year candidates did when they debuted on the ballot, none of them even got to 40%. I thought Carlos Beltran would be punished in the same way. I was wrong. I'm wrong about a lot of stuff. I was really wrong about this. Obviously, a lot of voters, myself included, looked at his career, looked at what he's accused of, and thought there are more reasons to vote for this guy than not.
All right, so you vote for him. You voted for Beltran.
Yeah, I'll be honest. He held up my ballot by over a week, trying to figure out what I wanted to do about Carlos Beltran. Carlos Beltran, as a baseball player, as a center fielder, I thought was an incredibly compelling candidate, an easy vote. One of the great switch hitters who ever played. Had a 300, 400, 600 slash line in the postseason. The only other player who played 40 postseason games with that slash line, Babe Ruth. And the fact that he was good at everything, offense, defense, running the bases, he had a powerful case. The question was, what did I think I should do about the cheating, about the sign-stealing scandal? And eventually, I just felt like there wasn't enough there compared to cheating scandals in the past, the way voters have handled cheating in the past, to convince me I should not vote for him. But I don't like being a member of the morality police. It's hard.
No, but you're making the choice. Should we honor this man? Should he be able to sit on this porch with Bill's brother and Robin Yount and Dennis Eckersley and George Brett and everyone else and be among that fraternity that is most exclusive and is kind of a royalty in this country? And that's something you can take seriously. And I don't look at it that I know you'll take hits online when you make a stand like this that, oh, you're a narc, you're Law and Order, you're like some federal agent. It's like, hold on, you're making the choice. Do we honor this man or not? And my only thing is, like, I thought the Astros, I think what John Morosi said yesterday was something that would have been great to hear 4 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever this was, that, okay, there were other teams sort of in that realm that were probably pretty close or maybe the equal of the Astros. The Astros maybe went a little further. The Astros are the ones who got caught. The Astros are the ones who had a player, talk about it and talk about it openly, go on the record, to Ken Rosenthal years ago, and now so it's out there, and everyone had to defend it, and then it came apart upon an investigation with Major League Baseball. Then Major League Baseball, who had warned them all, said, okay, now that's it. And then once that happened, man, it was Katie bar the door. And I'm just amazed now. It's only a few years later, and it's like, all right, look at his career war. Really? Okay. Again, I wasn't that outraged then. I was like, okay, it's got to be punished. But I think it became a dog pile. It became fashionable to pound these guys. They weren't liked, and that was part of it. So to see Beltran eventually honored here, I'm amazed. And selective outrage, we learn it again and again.
Yeah, I had this conversation with myself. I had it with others.
Did it go well?
Myself, always conflicted. I should never listen to myself.
Don't listen to yourself.
But I think the frame of the conversation was not all cheating is considered equal. Not all the same thing.
Right,
and if you go back through the years, two things. What do we do about other forms of cheating besides PED use? I mean, Gaylord Perry comes to mind. We're not keeping all cheaters out of the Hall of Fame.
No,
Are we?
different.
We're not.
Everything
and
is
sign
different.
stealing has a long history. I've told you this story. I was cleaning my office, came across a big story on the sign stealing scandal of 1909. Where's the outrage about that?
Well, it came to be. I asked that same question years ago when it was like, all right, are we going to talk about this every time we bring up the Astros? Or are we going to bring up sign stealing scandal? If we're going to do that, Willie Mays was on the 1951 Giants. The shot heard around the world that had a sophisticated, for the time, sign stealing regimen going on that they used to catch the Dodgers and then catch the Giants to catch the Dodgers and beat the Dodgers. It's the shot heard around the world, the most famous thing in baseball, really. And yet that was tied to sign stealing. So, no, eventually these things evaporate. And, right, some things are with a wink and a nod. We've seen that with the sticky stuff on the baseball. And you just want to say, OK, where's the line exactly? Do you cross it? And then do we choose to honor you? With PEDs, I think that is the most egregious of the cheating, where you're actually changing your body to gain a competitive advantage on your colleagues. So that stands to me as something that I will use if I would, when I'm talking about who would get my mythical vote or not. That to me is the maximum. Sign stealing is down a little bit. And I think what the writers are saying is sign stealing is a little farther from that and nowhere near Pete Rose and gambling.
True. And here's another parallel between the PED conversation and this conversation. What did we know and what did we not know about the PED era? Until there was testing and suspensions and accountability, you were playing a big guessing game. I don't recommend that game. It was really hard to play. Now, when we're looking at
it wasn't impossible. It wasn't impossible, though, Jason. It was obvious for a lot of guys. It was not impossible.
True, but like I don't want to relitigate the steroid era, but don't we all think that there are players who did something who are already in the Hall of Fame? We were lousy at the guessing.
You're not going to catch everybody, but you're going to be. It's going to be obvious that some are.
I know what you're saying.
Know.
All right,
yeah.
Here's the parallel. Do we think the Astros were the only team that were sealing signs electronically? We know they're not. Carlos Beltran got to Houston. This has been reported in The Athletic and said to the Astros, you guys are so far behind the times in terms of what you're doing, which tells us he knew or certainly suspected other teams were doing the same stuff.
I know we have to go back to Matt, but doesn't that tell you that he's kind of a super spreader, so to speak, of that type of activity?
Is it?
Yeah, but you say you guys are behind the times. Here's what I was doing over here and over here.
Okay,
I'm going to bring it to you.
But we're only applying our selective outrage to him.
Right. He was the guy. He's the guy that's bringing it from one club to another. He's the guy. He didn't pick it up from someone else. Well, maybe he did. It was a whole bunch of guys.
We don't know that.
Matty, we're out of time. We understand that.
Actually,
Jason and I, we might go inside and talk about this. We don't be outside, but we're going to talk about this.
Would you somebody please keep the tape rolling if you keep this conversation going? Because that was the best 12 minutes on the program in the past month or so. That was one of those discussions where Brian spoke. I'm like, yeah, he's right. And then it would get to Jason. I'm like, yeah, he's right. I mean, very compelling stuff, guys. We appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon. I'm not sure it's going to be as good as the last 12 minutes, but we'll be watching to find out. Good conversation there. Jason Stark, Brian Kenny joining us live from Cooperstown.
Thanks,
we've got so much more to do. When we come back, Oakland A's manager Mark Kotsay participating in a big charity event this week. We'll talk to him about that, his take on the Hall of Fame, and more with the A's skipper coming up next.
Hot Stove is presented by the General Insurance, a quality insurance company that's been saving people money for nearly 60 years.